in conjunction with Ross Owen's Band of Brothers blog. Band of Brothers, where are they now? .blogspot.com.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Black Sky Radio brings to you today Mr. Ezra Godden. Ezra, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's Godden, by the way.
Godden, excuse me. I never know which way to go, so I always Americanize it. All right, let's jump into our time machine, our Wayback process, and get back to 10 years ago.
wow.
Let's start with the audition process. How did you become Robert Van Klinken?
Just before the audition process started, which I guess was in like early 2000 or something, I was with Shane Taylor, who played Ro, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Bart Ruspoli, because we'd all been to drama school together, and we were in the same class.
Oh, wow.
So, and then we went... and we did, right after we left drama school, we went and did this play together. We were in an Australian play called Siren in South London. And we did that for a little bit. And then after that, we went for like the Millennium. Bart's mum invited us out to the Pyrenees Mountains because she was living up there at the time. And we all had this sort of great kind of holiday together. And I swear... my memory just, I'm not so sure about this, but I'm sure at the time we'd heard about this big production that was going to be coming and casting in London, and that Steven Spielberg was involved and Tom Hanks and stuff. And then it just seemed like we all went back to London after this holiday, and suddenly we're all there auditioning, and we're checking in with each other every so often because we saw each other all the time. And yeah, so 5 or 6 auditions later, we were all in it.
Isn't that something?
Now, when you were doing your auditions, did you read for multiple parts? We've heard from a lot of guys that you read for, they would read for a bunch of different people, and then they gave them something completely different. Is that the same experience for you?
Pretty much, yeah. I must have read for at least 5 or 6 guys. Every time I went back, it was a different guy, pretty much. I remember reading for Cobb, and I remember reading for the part of a lieutenant, which I think wound up being played by Colin Hanks, I think, Tom's son. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a different guy every time, and they were always mixing it up. And then eventually I was cast as Robert Burr Smith, and it was only, and so I'd got going with the research on him, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks into that, my agent called me up one day and said, it's not Robert Smith anymore, it's Bobby Van Klinken.
Wow.
Who actually, he didn't even say Robert Van Klinken. He just said, this was what happened. He called me up. He said, listen, you're not playing Robert Smith anymore. You're playing Van Klinken. And when I heard that, I assumed it was a German.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, because I didn't, and I should have put it together because my mum's half Dutch, and I should have realized that it was a Dutch name. But I just... in the moment, I assumed he was like a German, and I thought, "Wow, that's different." Not going to get to be one of the brothers, I guess. But.
I was just sent this from Ross. He said that you were also at one time cast to be Mike Rainey. Is that?
No, that's not. That's
okay.
Not the case. No, unless they cast me for like 5 seconds and they changed their minds and the information didn't filter down to me. I don't remember. No, I was cast as Robert Smith. Okay. And actually, funnily enough, his daughter got in touch with me recently on Facebook, and she was asking me, because she goes, a lot of her best friends are the sons and daughters of the other vets, and she's going to all the reunions and everything, and but she was curious as to why. I guess she found out that they cast me as her father, and then she was curious to know why it all got changed around, and I couldn't tell her, unfortunately, because they never told me. So, but I had a nice conversation with her about it.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably something you never bring up after the auditions. Like, well, wait a minute, why am I getting changed? Why do I change characters? It's just like, oh, new guy, all right, we're still part of the project. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, they tell you what to do, man.
Exactly.
You do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was curious to know, and I did want to know, and I think the explanation that she got in the end was that the script was like top heavy with sergeants or something like that, and they wanted to get more of the regular soldiers in on the show. But as far as I remember in the book, there wasn't much information about Robert Smith or Bobby Van Klinken.
And while we're on the subject, I do have a question from one of our fans. Her name's Jen from Minnesota. She says hello.
Oh, hi, Jen.
She wanted to know how difficult it was to research your character since, of course, he died at war.
I had very basic kind of information to go on. I remember I bumped into Garnier and Popeye, the real guys, on the set, I think sometime during the first episode, and I asked them what they could tell me, and they were really kind and gracious and told me that the bit of information I liked that Garnier came up with was that Bobby Van Klinken's nickname was the Dutchman.
Nice.
Which was nice for me because, I have my mum is like half Dutch and I have a lot of Dutch family, so I suddenly was like, oh, I wonder if they knew that when they cast me. I doubt it, but whatever.
Yeah, but it makes it a lot easier to slide into the part, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, certainly it gives you a connection.
Okay, let's talk about boot camp.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Did you?
It was awesome because I wasn't there.
How did you get out of being?
It was great hearing about it.
Well, yeah. Well, no. Here's the thing. I would have, and I know everyone says it, but I would love to have gone. And I'll tell you what. I was as I remember it, I was invited, but I was in Spain, and I was shooting a Peugeot commercial, and what wound up happening was I was out there shooting this commercial, and I'm hearing from Shane and Bart and all these guys who were on their way to boot camp, and I'm thinking, oh man, I really need to be there too, but I can't. I'm doing this thing. And then of course, when we started shooting the show a few weeks later, there was already this kind of camaraderie between these guys who had been through it. And then there was a few of us who, for whatever reason, we were, scheduling conflicts or whatever, couldn't make it to boot camp. And we were sort of on the outside a little bit for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks, which every day is a little tricky, you know what I mean? I mean, luckily for me, I knew a few of the guys before. I knew Shane, I knew Bart, and I knew Nolan Hemmings pretty well as well. But it was tricky there for the first, 2 or 3 weeks because you were kind of the outsider, you know what I mean? You were the guy that didn't have to go, or maybe they thought you dodged it or something like that. But that wasn't the case. It was just simply I couldn't make it because I was filming.
Yeah, suddenly you're part of the draft dodgers. You're headed to Canada. You didn't want to go to boot camp.
Well, you know what the irony is that the reason I remember suddenly becoming accepted by all the guys when the commercial started to air. The Peugeot commercial came on the air, and then they're all like suddenly, oh, we saw you on TV last night. Yay! All this sort of stuff. And it's suddenly like you're a member of the gang. That's the big irony of that.
Instead of getting beat into the gang, you actually just acted into the gang. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, since you weren't, there getting yelled at by, Captain Dye for the first 2 weeks, did you still catch a lot of his direction?
I got to know Dale Dye really quickly. I mean, he made sure I knew him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing push-ups in the mud because you left your rifle sitting somewhere, and it's raining, and you're out on some sort of runway in the middle of nowhere in Hatfield in February, you get to know people, intimately.
Well, yeah, that's the best way to get to know somebody. I found is, hey, you want to be friends? Do some push-ups for me. Do you remember breaking your boots in?
Yeah, I mean, from all the running and the walking and everything else, I had probably some really bad blisters, and then I broke them in, as well as I can remember.
Did you keep them?
I did keep my boots. Yeah, I remember one of the guys when on his last day of filming, he tried to sneak out a helmet, and from where the staging area was to the big sort of gates at the beginning of the where the airfield sort of begins, takes about 10 minutes to actually get out of the Hatfield airfield or whatever.
Wow.
And so obviously by the time he got to the gates, someone had contacted the driver, realizing, I guess, that the helmet was missing, and the car turned around, brought him all the way back, and he had to give it back.
Damn.
Wow. Well,
So they were pretty hot and stuff like that. They let us keep our boots, but not much else. Everything else was, it was all rented, I guess. So.
That's very important information, and
Absolutely.
we'll tell you
Yeah,
why.
he had the helmet up his shirt. I was like, you're never gonna get away with it, mate.
What? They didn't have a
not gonna
bag?
yeah, because we've got a lot of reports of stuff being missing. As a matter of fact, one of your buddies, Nolan Hemmings, he got away with everything but the rifle.
He did. What else did he get?
Shoot.
He got the bandoliers. He got the boots, the pants, the shirt, the
Jacket.
trench coat, the helmet. He sent us a picture. So everything you see in the picture, with the exception of the rifle, I have still.
He's probably waiting for the right price on eBay.
He said he just put a trench coat on and walked off.
Good for him, man.
Yeah,
Good
right?
for him. You know what? Nolan was great on set because he was like the snack man. He had he filled all those little pouches that we carried around on our person or whatever. All those things that full of whatever ammo and stuff. He replaced all the ammo with peanuts and Pringles. And all this, he probably doesn't even, maybe he remembers, I don't know. But like, I'd always go up to him if I was like peckish.
That's adorable.
And I go, I dip my hand into one of his little pouches and pull out some peanuts or whatever snacks he had in there that day.
That's how he makes friends.
He did not tell us that. He did not tell us he was the snack master.
No, that's
well,
not
he wouldn't because he's trying to pretend he's a serious actor,
Uh-huh. Well, that's not completely true. I mean, he on his own merit makes friends. He's a very charming man.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you didn't steal anything? You just you took the boots they gave you and you didn't pocket nothing else?
I'm sure I've got my dog tags. I have my boots. But I must admit, when I saw that happen to that guy who tried to take the helmet, I was like, oh man, I don't want that to happen to me. Like I'm all the way almost out the gate and in the clear, and then they turn the car around and bring me all the way back.
The drive of shame.
The drive
of shame. You're like,
Wait a minute. That's a shame. Wow, those guys are really talented.
Yeah, they are. Especially Nolan. I mean,
Sneaky.
my respect for him just doubled, knowing that he got away with everything else, and you're telling me a guy couldn't even sneak a helmet out.
I'm amazed. I don't know how he did it. That's. I'm gonna have to give him a bell and find out. That's special.
He is a charmer, though. Like, he might have just talked himself out.
Well, that's the
trouble.
art of direction, misdirection. You start talking, facing one way.
Who's gonna notice?
Well, I think probably where the other guy came unstuck was that it was his last day on set, and everyone knew it. And Nolan probably kind of stole one thing a day for a week.
He Radar O'Reilly'd it.
Yeah, he probably
Like a mouse.
Dog tags one day, shirt the next day, helmet the next day. That's a gradual kind of thing. He probably did it like 6 months before he was off the show. That way they were never suspected him.
I don't know if I could see somebody doing that.
That's
too.
what happens when you have so much time to think about things.
Now, besides Shane and Bart and Nolan that you knew going into this, did you get close to anybody else on set?
I was good friends with George, and Doug Allen and I wound up living in apartments across from each other in LA not long after Band was done. Actually, it was maybe like 2 or 3 years later, actually, come to think of it. I think it was when we both first were sort of out in LA, and we just both got agents and managers here and stuff. And I ran into him at an audition, and I was looking for an apartment, and he said there was a place across from him. So we wound up living like opposite each other for about 3 months or something.
That's something.
Very cool.
So we were good friends.
Now, since you've been in LA for the last 8-9 years, you've been going to the barbecues at Kudlitz's place?
No, I haven't. I've been invited, and the last time Shane was over, which was I think the end of last year, he said he was going to one, and I know the invitation's like open, but I'm not a reunion kind of guy. It's just not my scene.
Now, did you? Since you weren't at the actual boot camp for the shenanigans, did you pull any shenanigans while you were on set, or did you witness them, or were you the butt of any of the jokes?
I remember one that started and ended very quickly. It may have even just happened over the course of one day. I remember there was this. For a brief moment, the trend was to, how can I put this, relieve yourself in someone else's trailer and not flush. As I recall, that lasted for maybe a day or two, and then it kind of got annoying really quickly. Annoying isn't even the word. I'm not sure how to, express, but I'm sure you can use your imagination.
Well, we talked at length about that with Jimmy Matteo.
I knew it would. I was gonna say I knew it was gonna be him because he started it. I'm sure he did.
Well, and he comes to
because
it
he was describing to me what he'd just done in someone else's trailer, and I was like, it's good, Jimmy.
Now let's. Unfortunately, for your role and your character, Van Klinken did get killed in action. So you had 4 episodes before his demise. Did you have a favorite scene to shoot in that time?
The first episode was crazy because things were just constantly changing. New scripts were coming in every day, and my first sort of bit, if you will, came about, and it was with Frank John Hughes in his scene in the movie theater in the first episode, where Garnier, I guess he finds this letter. He's really upset, and I shush him in the movie theater, and that was my big kind of bit in episode 1, and I remember I remember thinking, well, I guess I did okay. And then I remember hearing later on when some of the rushes started to come back to us that a couple of the guys, it was their favorite thing in the rushes. So I was quite happy with that. So yeah, I guess that moment, because it's so different to sort of everything else. Yeah, that was I have good memories of that.
Did you stick around for any other scenes that maybe you weren't in that you wanted to see?
Yeah, I mean, I was, because obviously Damien was in every episode a lot. I'd always sort of stick around and watch him working because I wanted to see, what he was like. I mean, he had such an important role in it that I stuck around to watch him a few times, definitely.
Nice.
And he sold me, so.
Yeah, it was an amazing performance. But then again, everything that every time I watch it, everybody in the whole thing is just phenomenal. I mean, I couldn't think of anybody that I would. I've told this to everybody we've interviewed. I'm like, you know what? Almost every movie that comes out, you'd be like, you know who'd be good in this also, or instead of. You can't do that with Band of Brothers.
No. And everyone did such a good job. Like, there's no one's stealing nothing. Everyone's keeping up with one another, which is something I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, it is by far one of the best pieces of cinematography ever created.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, and I think, you know, on the one hand, everyone wanted to, you know, pay their respects. And then on the other, you've got a bunch of sort of competitive actors who didn't want to outdo each other, but certainly wanted to keep up with each other. And gave it all they had, you know. And I guess, you know, going through boot camp and all that stuff pushed everyone to a point where they're like, you know, this is why we're doing this.
Now, when you were doing the filming, did you think that it was going to be as big as it turned out to be, and have the longevity it has?
Well, the funny thing was that I think as we understood it, it was going to go out on BBC One in England, because that's where I saw it, and that's one of like the big sort of 4 channels or whatever on terrestrial TV. But then it got switched to BBC Two at the last second, because I think there was some changes, I guess, at the BBC, and they just switched it to BBC Two, which felt like BBC Two has a sort of smaller viewing figures. So I was quite surprised that they did that. But I mean, it's in terms of like how big it was and longevity, yeah, I mean, I expected nothing less. I thought we were in really good hands. And I mean, that's another abiding memory is just feeling safe, because, you know, everyone in the creative element, there were just these incredible sort of reputations or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And so to be thrown into that, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, you did an excellent job. Well, did working on Band of Brothers, obviously a period piece, you know, going through World War II as a member of Easy Company, did it change your perceptions on what you had learned about World War II? Did you see it in a new light at all?
Not really. Obviously, when I read the book, and the book is obviously incredibly detailed, and I think, you know, credit where credit's due. You know, the writers of the series tried to, you know, I mean, they had 10 hours, I guess, to sort of get as much of that detail across as possible. But overall, I was pretty familiar with the history of World War II. I mean, my dad had sort of hammered it into me a little bit, so it didn't change my perception too much. There were no big surprises, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I mean, there were definitely surprises in the book as far as what Easy Company achieved. You know, just by themselves was incredible. I mean, it's literally incredible. So that was a big you know, a revelation, because obviously we were wondering, well, why this unit, you know, what's so special about them, why are we doing the show about them? And then you realize reading the book that they were, you know, outstanding.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing to me as well, reading the book, was that, as far as I remember, the plot of the true life plot of sort of Saving Private Ryan was basically a paragraph in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I remember reading that as well, that Tom Hanks read the book, read that paragraph, and made a 2-hour movie out of it.
Yeah, which gives you some clue as to the sort of vastness of the book and just how many separate kind of stories there are within the book.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, and that's one of the testaments to how good it was, or how well it was made. The fact that every year you're getting a new group of fans. You know, currently in our chat room, you got people there from 16 to 60 that are hanging out in the chat room listening to this interview. You know, I because after Band of Brothers, I did a couple of horror movies, and so between like Band of Brothers and these horror movies that I did, which have this sort of cult following, I get, you know, a fair amount of people contacting me on Facebook or finding my email somewhere or whatever, and it's either all about Band of Brothers or all about these horror movies. So yeah, it seems to be gaining fans all the time. How long were you actually involved with the shooting, and did you stick around to play background?
I was. I think I finished. I want to say I finished in August of 2000. A good 6 months, I guess. I remember when we first started, there were nights when we were out on the airstrip where there was just no shelter and it was raining and the wind was kind of blowing and stuff. And you just couldn't put on enough clothes because it was so cold. And then from that extreme to maybe somewhere in June or July, towards the end of my part on the show, you're out and there's nowhere to kind of, you know, you're out in the middle of an airfield in the middle of nowhere, and it was the reverse. It was just unbearably hot, so there were real sort of weather extremes, I remember. And I remember I don't know why this just came to me, a ping pong tournament.
Okay, now that's the first time we've heard about a ping pong tournament.
Oh, there was a ping pong. This was serious stuff, man. I mean, I was sort of getting up there and getting better every day because I mean, I love my table tennis. But the man to beat was Damien for sure.
Really?
Wow.
I can't remember whether he had some sort of, I don't know, maybe he was a professional when he was a junior professional or something, but he was insanely good at ping pong, and I was always trying to beat him, and I think I did once.
Nice.
But between us, the actors, and the TAs, there was definitely a sort of table tennis tournament going on for a few months, because you know it's a lot of waiting around. So what are you going to do? It's either that or go and take a dump in someone's trailer, you know, and that didn't last long. So.
And you got to wait till July for that to happen for the full effect, right?
Yeah.
You know, get the heat working on it. Now, as soon as we announced on Facebook, as soon as Ross Owen announced on Facebook that you were going to be our guest today, Bart chimed in and wanted to make sure that we asked you a question.
Oh, no, he did.
Yeah, he did.
What was he saying?
He wants to know, can you see the mountains?
Yes. Yes, I can see them clearly now.
And what does that mean?
Do you know what? It's not even funny. I don't know why he thinks this is so hilariously funny. It's not even worth talking about on the show. This harks back to when we were in... you remember at the beginning of the interview I said we were in the three of us were in the Pyrenees Mountains for the Millennium?
Indeed.
We've been invited up there by Bart's mum, and so we were hanging out, and one day we climbed to the top of this mountain, and I happened to say, "Look at the mountains," and for some reason Bart thinks this is hysterically funny. Like, I didn't know there were going to be mountains or something like that. Maybe that's his take on it or something, but but it just is a real letdown as a punchline to a joke. There is no joke. Okay, so the joke's on you guys.
Well, I think it's still funny because an inside joke is still a joke. I don't care, even if it's a location joke where you had to be there. It's still it's still funny when you.
Bart thinks it's tremendously funny to this day. Here we are, 10 years later, and we're still cackling.
Well, see, and that's the funny part is the fact that you know it's not funny, but you're forced to tell the story, and it's like, come on, this isn't funny, but here's what happened.
Yeah,
which is still kind of funny.
You should get him back on and get him to tell you his take. Maybe I think his is funnier than mine.
Well, I was hoping he would be listening today because every once in a while he'll pop up on Skype and say, "Hey, you got to say this or you got to ask that,"
and join it.
We're probably one of the first people to give you a call and force you to talk about Band of Brothers en masse like this for a long time. But do you have a specific memory we haven't covered yet that whenever you get asked the question that you go, "Oh yeah, and by the way,"
I remember one day. Was one of those long days, and there was a bit where I had to. I think I sort of kind of we've just parachuted out of the sky, and I think I have to sort of drop in front of camera, and then I dig up a little. The idea was I dig up a little piece of turf and I put it in my backpack as a souvenir, sort of thing. And I remember I had to sort of just kind of tumble down in front of camera was the idea. And I remember the first AD, I didn't realize it because I was in some sort of weird trance. Maybe I was watching like all the other guys coming down from their cranes because they were being like dropped from cranes with these parachutes for for a last second thing. And I remember the AD screamed right in my ear. He'd said action about 10 times, and I just didn't. I was so enamored with the sight of these guys like dropping out of the sky. I was sort of in a bit of a trance. But he was literally right in my ear screaming action because I guess he'd moved a little bit closer every time because he thought I couldn't hear him or something. and so by the end, he was literally facing me, screaming in my face, action, and I just wasn't moving. And I have no idea to this day why that happened, but I think I was just.
Well, you were the you were the little kid playing baseball out in the outfield, chasing butterflies.
Exactly. I was. It was an amazing sight, and I think that's probably what it was. It was a long day, and I was just like watching these guys and not. Getting down to business, which is what I should have been doing. And I remember now that you asked the question, during the audition process, maybe the third audition, I went in or like at the end of the second audition, they said, "Oh, come back next time, we want you to meet Tom Hanks." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, let's do that." So then I showed up at the third audition, and it was in a hotel on Regent Street somewhere, I think. And there were about 10 people in the room with cameras and things like that. And then this guy came up to me and sort of shook my hand, and I'm thinking, well, where's Tom? But it was him, and he was doing Castaway, and he just had these dreadlocks. And this big bushy beard. I mean, none of that was fake. That was all real, the real thing. So I just didn't even cotton on to the fact that it was him until he introduced himself. First I thought, who's this weird guy walking towards me? Because he looked so weird next to everyone else. He really looked like the odd one out. Like, who let this guy in the room? What's going on? Enormous beard and these dreadlocks and, got to give the guy credit.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything half.
No, he doesn't do anything by half, and he really went all the way with that. And it was just funny. I think I let out a little laugh because I was so nervous, and suddenly, he's there, and none of us had any idea what Castaway was or anything. I think this was maybe during a break in filming for him. But I remember that stayed with me for sure. It was a surreal moment, but one I'll hold dear to my heart.
That's awesome. I have one last question. It's the question we always wind up our interviews with that I want to ask you. How would you sum up the men that you portrayed, the real men of Easy Company?
Incredibly brave, selfless men who I don't envy, what they had to do. And of course I admire every one of them. And it was just an honor to be involved, and an honor to, would have been an honor to portray any one of them. I'm sure everyone else feels the same way. I think there's just a wealth of love there, and for all of us, and we were so sort of deeply involved in it. And for a lot of the guys, it was like a year, at least a year of their lives, So yeah, I mean, it always it always touches me or saddens me. I mean, when I talked to Susan Finn when she got in touch with me, Robert Smith's daughter, when she got in touch with me recently and was asking me if I knew anything about why her dad wasn't portrayed in the show. She was kind enough to tell me what he went on to do after the war. He went into the CIA, and he led a really adventurous life, and he was happy by all accounts, and it really touched me, and I was really pleased to hear that he found peace and that he was happy, and I was surprised, actually, even myself, after all these years, how much it affected me, just knowing. And I said, listen, stay in touch. I want you to, anytime you feel like sharing this stuff with me, then please do, because obviously I'm not in touch with any of Bobby's family, but this is just as great, So yeah, it's a big deal for all of us. It was a really important. It's been an important part of our lives.
I'm glad you brought up Susan, because I do have word that she is listening right now, and I just wanted to relay the message that she does say hi, Ezra.
Oh, that's hi, Susan. How you doing?
Well, we're not going to take up any more of your time today, Ezra. We appreciate you taking the time that you have given us.
All righty, man. Thanks. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.